I'm Aaron Reynolds, creator of Effin Birds, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Aaron Reynolds about his graphic novel, Effin Birds, and more. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Aaron is a Webby Award-winning author of Effin Birds. That's E-F-F-I-N, Birds. A comic strip pairing intricate artwork with mundane daily frustrations read by over 500,000 people every day. His first book, Effin Birds, A Field Guide to Identification, hit bookstores in 2019, and for 7 whole days was a best-selling book by any Canadian author not named Margaret Atwood. Prior to writing Effin Birds as his full-time gig, Aaron was a creative director for a podcast network, a software trainer for Apple, and a Santa Claus photographer at the worst mall in Mississauga, Ontario. Effin Birds is a compact, comprehensive, and very silly field guide featuring more than 200 of the rudest birds on Earth, from the creator of the Webby Award-winning hit Instagram account. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Aaron Reynolds about his graphic novel, Effin Birds, and more. So, Aaron Reynolds, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you and your time. I want to first start off, though, by asking you, what was the first comic book that you read?
It was funny when you asked this, I was like, oh man, like I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. I know it's a Green Lantern comic, and I know it's from somewhere around 1980 or 81. And I can see it in my head. Like I can see a 2-page spread of it with Green Lantern flying in space. And I remember it being incomprehensible, and I remember really enjoying it.
Cool.
And I read it 7 or 8 times while sitting at a laundromat while we were cleaning our clothes on vacation.
There you go.
That's my first comic book.
Cool. Good. Well, great inspirations growing up, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
Holy moly. It's kind of funny because like I try hard when I'm in the mode of writing to not look at other stuff for a while. You know, like I try to be fresh. I try to not get all tied up in something else that I'm enjoying. Like I spent a long time in my professional career as a photographer, and the worst thing that you can do is get really excited by someone else's photographs and go try to emulate them, and then sort of end up shooting a whole thing in somebody else's style and then going, what was I doing? And I know that I recently watched the TV series Devs, which is amazing if you haven't seen Devs. But about halfway through the series, I was my photographer brain was taking over, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what is the specific filter they're using to achieve this effect? Because I'm pretty sure I have this filter. And then there's a whole, if you go to my Instagram, there's the whole summer after I saw Devs is all pictures that look exactly like Devs. And I start making jokes about it at some point. I was like, I clearly just watched Devs. So I try to keep my time separated a little bit, but if I think about my very all-time favorites and my things that that I just wanted to make, there was this book called, it was a fake guide to Canada called The Wanker's Guide to Canada. And it was written by a bunch of the people who worked on SCTV.
Okay.
And it was taking all kinds of source material and adapting it and making it look like something else, but obviously wrong. And it made me laugh so hard constantly. It was people who had never been to Canada, visiting Canada for the first time and explaining their experiences. And just the explaining what the little men on the little street signs were was screamingly funny. My favorite one was the cross-country skiing guy, that you see sometimes on those little beside the road signs. And it said man with sticks on his feet crossing. and then there was the downhill skiing guy, and it said you just ran over a man with sticks on his feet. And I love that. I love that so much. And so like that sort of like incongruous humor is like my favorite thing of all time. I'm glad that I'm capable of writing that because there are lots of humors. There's lots of kinds of humor that I like that I know I can't write. Like I can't write funny, sad, like the Billy Wilder movie style humor. Like I can't do that, but I can do incongruous humor. And so I'm glad that I can. And I'm glad that I ended up making a fake bird spotting guide that like draws heavily from Thomas Bewick's History of British Birds, like in format and shape and look and feel and even, the style of writing. And so, there you go. There's me like heavily diving into an influence while I'm working on something. I like read that book 7 or 8 times while working on my own bird spotting guide. And yeah. And so I love that. I'm trying to think of what are my favorite things right now? Because I'm in this blur of con season. And so I'm like, I don't get to do any reading for enjoyment right now, which is kind of depressing. But like, let me think of my favorites. I hate that I'm drawing a blank because I'm going to be, okay, here we go. I love the Not a Wolf book. Do you know Not a Wolf, the Twitter account?
No, I don't know that one. Yeah.
Okay. So it's I believe the Twitter handle is Sick of Wolves, and it's the Twitter account of a wolf pretending to be a man. And it's a wolf that's gotten a job at an advertising agency and doesn't live in the woods anymore and clearly regrets it. And it's this like existential angst of wanting to run free in the woods while having to punch in and work at a job. And it really taps into something deep about, like what our domesticated lifestyle has done to humanity and to just our like own mental health. But it's also screamingly funny. And then the book is formatted as a choose your own adventure, as if you're the wolf trying to navigate a day. And the illustrations are by Sage Coffee, and they're so good. So Dan Sheehan wrote it, Sage Coffee illustrated. It's really, really terrific. I love it.
Sounds good. Well, let's talk about your current project that you have on the go called Effin Birds. And let me spell that out. It's EFFIN Birds, just in case people are thinking something else. So can you talk a wee bit about that? Maybe what inspired you to create it?
Yeah. So Effin Birds is a one-panel comic where I get rid of all of my existential angst along with beautiful bird artwork to kind of make it palatable and, have people not think that I'm a serial killer or something like that. And there were two things that happened at the same time that created Effin Birds and then made it succeed. And one of them was I had been working on a project called Swear Trek, which was a very dumb Twitter Tumblr project where I would recut episodes of Star Trek. I would take away the dialogue and I'd re-edit scenes, and then I'd add my own captions and put them up as animated GIFs. It had gained some notoriety and, had a nice following. And I got asked by a big media organization for some pitches for their social media brand. Their comedy brand on social was kind of like dying, but it was a legendary comedy brand. So I was like excited for the opportunity to do something with that name attached to it. And I had been working on, what's the version of Swear Trek where I control everything and I can make money? Like, what are the parts of it that are good and reproducible everywhere, and what are the parts of it that I don't want to reproduce because they're killing me and they're the worst things? So like, I don't want to edit video ever again for a project, and I don't want to make animated GIFs for a project ever again because it's an awful format. And so I had this big list of pros and cons, and then this big media organization comes along and asks for pitches, and I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to make the perfect thing for them by distilling this list. And I handed them what was essentially Effin Birds, and they hated it. They really, really hated it. And I felt really bad for a couple days, like I'd blown my shot. And then I was like, but hey, you know what? They're like not good at this, and I'm good at this. So maybe they're wrong and I'm right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to do it myself. And when we come back to our next meeting in 2 more weeks for a few more pitches, I'm going to show them that it did some numbers. And that sort of lit a fire under me to do it as best I could, and to give it every chance of success, and, use every tool in my arsenal to give it a leg up and get going. And by the end of the 2 weeks, it was more popular than their whole brand.
Wow.
And so what was going to be like a 2-week thing just to show them that I could do it, and then I was going to go off and do something else, has now been running for 5 years as a daily comic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, right.
That is something. Yeah. Well,
I've never done any creative project that long. Yeah, it's a great lesson. Like being motivated by spite, of course, is very powerful. But also, like, if you put in the work, things can happen, and that's part of it. Like, the project can be good, the idea can be good, but you also have to put in the work, and you also have to be lucky. Like, you need all those things to happen for you at the same time.
Right. Well, I was curious. I first ran into you at the Niagara Falls Comic-Con recently, so lots of interaction with people. I'm wanting to know from you, what sort of reaction do you get from people in general when they're looking at your work?
Oh, yeah. There's two kinds of reactions. There's the people who get it and the people who just don't get it. And I love both reactions because, like, the people who get it, it's very validating to me because I think, like a lot of people, I thrive on validation. And so, like, you know, when somebody likes something that I did, that's like, I really appreciate that. The thing is, because it's so self-explanatory and because the name is like so nice and clean and clear, it really does make sense what you're going to get to most people when they look at it. And, you know, they either get it and are into it, or they get it and are not into it and move along. And then there's the people who are angry, and the people who don't get why it's funny and then are angry about it are absolutely my favorite people in the entire world, because they spend so much energy on not liking something that I've made that they could do so much with that. I mean, you could probably power a small city with the anger of the people who don't like what I made. And I love that I just that far inside their heads, you know, in such a quick, short period of time, that I took over this part of their brain, and they hate it. And I think that it's the best way to get a real read on those people is to go to my Amazon reviews for my book and filter by 1 star. And they are life-giving. Like, I have never been happier to get negative reviews. Whenever I go and I filter by 1 star and there are new ones, I'm just like, oh, pour a cup of coffee. Let's go. Let's enjoy this. Let's savor this moment. And there was a guy who actually, we ended up putting it on the back cover of the second book because it was so good. And it said, it is painfully obvious that the author has no knowledge of or interest in actual birds. And it's like, yes, that's true. Yeah. I don't like, birds are like a dodge. Birds are there to take the edge off of this. Birds aren't there because I'm trying to give you factual information about birds. And I think that there's this expectation from some people that something is always going to be exactly what they want. And when it's not what they want, they're mad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, mm-hmm. and it's so funny that people are mad at my cartoon for not being a factual bunch of bird information when no one promised them that.
Right.
You know?
Well, I gotta say, like, the first thing that catches the eye is your amazing artwork. I mean, when you are drawing birds and you're illustrating birds, it looks like, you know, you're looking at a field guide, right? But then you juxtapose that with the comedy, the sort of the lines that you deliver that are juxtaposed to this massively wonderful drawing that you do. I think that's what the brains can't sort of decide what's going on here.
Right, like what's happening with those two disparate things, like yeah, crashing into each other. And I think what's really funny is because I was trying to start this very quickly, like the first thing that I did was actually just straight up use Thomas Buick's woodcuts of birds. Mm-hmm. And you know, since the project has grown, like it's become a lot more than that, but like I was trying to do it very quickly, and at some point I was like, you know, this is my cartoon and it turns out that this is maybe my job. I can draw. Shouldn't I be drawing my own cartoon? Mm-hmm. You know, like there's that really like wild moment. But yeah, that's it was because I started with that template of Thomas Buick and his beautiful, you know, I think that the thing about Buick's work is that the birds clearly have very human personalities. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that was what made the whole gag work, is that there was this easily mappable to a human emotion, like expression on the face of these birds.
Right. Well, speaking of artwork, let's switch gears now and talk about the tools used to create your art. Can you walk me through your workflow as well?
Oh, holy moly. I change all the time. And I recently had a big moment where I realized, so I worked for Apple for 12 years. And part of what I did at Apple was I had a job where I taught like creative things to end users using Apple's tools. And so I was very firmly for a very long time, in a 100% Apple ecosystem. And I still am mostly in the Apple's ecosystem, but it's been interesting to have not worked there for a few years and then to suddenly say, oh, I can explore other things. My favorite thing that I got, you ever get the Instagram ad for the Remarkable tablet? You ever get those?
No,
ads?
I haven't heard that one. No, what's that?
Oh, it's really neat. It's designed primarily as a note-taking tablet. It's really thin. It's the size of a sheet of paper. It's an e-ink, and it uses Wacom's like EMR technology. And I liked it. I got it because it seemed like it would be fun, and I liked it. And then I didn't use it all that much until I broke the barrel of the stylus that came with it, and I realized I could buy any one of hundreds of different styluses sold by all these other companies. And it changed my entire outlook on it because all these styluses have different ideas behind them, right? Like they fulfill different needs. And I ended up with these two that I use all the time. I use this Wacom Mitsubishi reproduction of an animator's pencil. It's a wooden pencil, and there's a bunch of different styluses like that. But the magic of it is that it really does have the scritch of pencil against paper when I'm using it on the surface of this. And like that, I didn't recognize how important that was going to be to me until I had it. And so I was like, okay, well, all the other tools can go now because I'm using this pencil, and then I'm using a Lamy, like it was one of their fountain pens, but with an EMR tip in it, and I use that. And so it's sort of like penciling and inking, but having the feel of penciling and inking on the tablet. And so that's those are my starting points for everything, and then everything goes into Pixelmator on the Mac, and I do a lot of nice work in there. But
cool.
Yeah, it all starts on a Remarkable now.
Nice. As I said, we met up at Niagara Falls Comic Con. I wanted to ask you how you'll be promoting your books this year. Will you be attending any other conventions or festivals?
Oh, yes. I just actually did a gauntlet. No, I'm in the middle of the gauntlet because I emceed the social media stage at Collision Conference, which is a big technology conference in Toronto. Yes. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's a great video of me burning bridges with large corporations during my keynote. And then I did right after that. I flew to Denver for Fan Expo Denver, and then I flew right from Denver to Montreal for Montreal Comic Con. Both of those shows were tremendous. And then for the rest of the year, I think it's a little lighter. I'm generally doing 2-ish shows a month, but a lot of Comic Cons. It's terrible, but I actually just visit my own website to see what my schedule is.
Sure, that's the best place to go. Yeah,
I mean, it makes me keep it up to date. So I got invited to a thing called Pretty Heroes, which is like it started as a Sailor Moon convention.
Oh,
and I was like, yes. Also, why? Why am I invited to this? But apparently, they like me, so I'm doing that one. Then Fan Expo Canada, Ottawa Comic Con, Amazing in Las Vegas, Winnipeg Comic Con, Thought Bubble in the UK. And one in New Brunswick called Big Country Expo, which is a new one from a guy named Justin that I met at Winnipeg Comic Con, who decided he wanted to start doing his own shows. And I was like, I support this. Let's do this.
Yeah. So it sounds like you got a lot of projects and conventions on the go. So I'm wondering, do you have anything else up and coming that you can talk about?
Oh, yeah. So I have a few things. My page-a-day calendar for 2023 should start hitting bookstores end of this month, start of next month. So I'm excited for that. Sometime, just in time for the fall calendar buying season. And it's kind of funny because like I thought that my big thing was going to be like, oh my God, I got to do a book and I'm going to get to do more books. But when Andrews McMeel offered me a page a day calendar and I realized like, I would always buy the Far Side page a day calendar as a kid. And I ended up ripping those cartoons off and taping them up all over my house. And I was like, yes, this is my ultimate goal. And I have always wanted this. And writing the content for the page a day calendar, even though I'm writing a daily comic strip, like getting that all ready, it is as much work or more work than doing the book. So when people are like, when's another book coming? I was like, well, I just did a whole book worth of work on this calendar. You should probably buy that.
Right.
But, and also, I am working on other stuff, but that's the big one that's coming out that people can actually have is the calendar in a little bit. And then I've been working on and off, and I've carved out a big space in my schedule to work on it, is a really wonderfully bad comic book idea called Space Werewolf, about a failed Russian moon mission that would have beaten the Americans to the moon. But unfortunately, one of the crew was a werewolf, and he didn't realize that it's always full moon on the moon.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so that's my weird Russian space werewolf story. And somehow I'm, working on a television pilot right now, which is very strange for me, but hopefully that comes to something, because it's also a terrible, vigilante story. It's about the world's worst vigilante. I also have my second book coming out in French, which really surprises me. I was picked up by a publisher in France called Éditions Le Pen, and they did a lovely postcard book adaptation of my first field guide. And then apparently we sold a lot of books in France. And so I have a second book coming out in France in the next couple of weeks. I finally got to see it for the first time. They sent me a bunch of copies just in time for Montreal Comic Con. They sent them right to the venue. And so the morning of the first day of Montreal Comic Con, I got to open the box and touch the books for the first time and, put them out on my table, which was great.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot on the go. You mentioned it before, but what website do you recommend people go to find out about your current and your future projects?
Oh, yeah. You can go to effinbirds.com, EFFIN birds.com. And it has links to all the places to read the comics every day. It has a nice shop where you can buy weird merchandise. I made the other day a nice polo shirt with a little embroidered dog that's vomiting, instead, where you would normally have an alligator, and a bunch of Effin Birds cartoons on mugs and good stuff like that.
Thanks to Aaron for the chat. You can discover more about Effin Birds on Twitter and Instagram at EFFINBIRDS and online at effinbirds.ca. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification bell. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.